Hi, I'm Dr. Gilgamesh, and I'd like to introduce you to my podcast, Emotional Anatomy. It's an intelligently designed anatomy that has as its goal the recruiting your interest and curiosity as to how it works so that you can become more familiar with it and, as a result, better at it and enjoy it more. Welcome. Hello, Dr. Gilgamesh again. I think it's fair for me to try and explain my website. I imagine most of you have come to this podcast via my website, Gilgamesh.com and others. Everybody arrives through a different space, Wonder Man, etc. But the idea being that if here I've presented this in the written word for a long time, and I've explained that this is emotional anatomy, and so I've opted to take to the podcast in order to expose you to the emotion of it all. Goodness gracious. And yet at the same time, the website's still there with the written word. So to feel it is to recognize smackdown guerrilla wrestling on cosmic television. You see, how come? What prompted me to say such a thing? Well, because I'd like for you, as a scientist, I'm encouraging you to examine me, really, to examine this idea that I'm putting forward and to determine whether or not it's relevant to you. On that opening page, we find a link to my blog, The Magnificent Woman. Why such a title? All of it has to do with this emotional anatomy, you see. All of it is an effort to recruit interest, fascinate, get you curious. All of those are healthy emotions that would guide you forward into the discovery of what I'm claiming, or the ability to say, wait a second, it's not true. You see, as a scientist, it has to be true for you if it's going to be real. So I can't just offer you a philosophy that isn't going to be confirmed by people who study it. So smackdown guerrilla wrestling on cosmic television, this is the tug of war. This is the battle within your mind's eye. This is the ability and skill for you to turn back into the mirror and see yourself struggling against thoughts that would try to suppress, depress, and other methods of trying to prevent you from experiencing liberation, experiencing freedom. This is the tug of war, freedom versus slavery. And that summarizes all of our psychological experience. To be able to see it clearly, however, requires that you confront this tug of war, this smackdown guerrilla wrestling. I call it guerrilla wrestling, by the way. It's the G-U-E-R-R, guerrilla, not gorilla wrestling. We're wrestling against hidden attributes. We're wrestling against things that hit and run, things that act like guerrilla warfare. So certain thoughts might get in the way of your experiencing freedom to choose. Certain thoughts get in the way of discovering that gratitude is a guidance system, that there are emotions and that impair our ability to recognize this gratitude guidance system that allows us to begin understanding that there is a heart home, and a heart home by our own free choice, that we actually see the new movie of our heart home. This is a vocabulary presented in the website. But first, the vocabulary leads us into the magnificent woman. And that stems from the whole notion of legacy. Gilgamesh himself, 5,000-year-old character, you see. He's actually written up in the king's literature. He's recorded in the books of and was a king for a period of time. His legend, of course, gets blown out of proportion, but very simply, what he attempted was legacy to the future of his people. And the legend would claim that he met with Utnapishtim and came back with a fruit that would offer eternal life. So we can't say whether or not he was correct, but still to this day, we argue over his legend. We argue as to what the most accurate interpretation is. I'm using it to convey legacy. I'm using it to suggest that we are the indigenous people to the next 5,000 years. We are the beginning of the Gilgamesh epic again that would see the merit of persuading you to join in, to participate, to become one of the whole. You see, that we are talking to each other about how our mind works so that the next generation can add to this vocabulary and improve. Freedom chooses what's better. It doesn't get stuck with what it thinks is best. You see, freedom offers you the opportunity to go into your heart's home and recognize a lens of awe and wonder through which you're allowed to then see more clearly and choose more wisely what's better. And in witnessing this concept, the tug of war begins, as I say, the magnificent woman. Just by saying that, automatically in your mind's eye, there's plenty of thoughts that are in opposition to the concept, you see. This is tug of war. This is light side, dark side. This is Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. This is a battle for primacy. This is a battle inside of you to see clearly your personal free choice, your personal significance to the future of the world. And the magnificent woman conveys that concept. You see, it is the women that raise our children. It is the women that will foster this vocabulary in the next generation. All right, granted, the elementary school teachers are going to have to catch on too. The physicians, I'm arguing, may be the first wave because my credential of MD may offer them the greater motivation to study what I'm saying and to discover that this is simply emotional anatomy, much like the physical anatomy. The emotional anatomy is not going to change. It operates according to principles that can be described, and I'm recruiting all of you to join in to this description, for each of us has a different perspective. That will be a fascinating awareness in our next podcast. That perspective is unique, and I recruit your collaboration in developing this perspective that allows us to speak more clearly and more accurately as to how it works. The magnificent woman, of course, penetrates a part of us that would have already a movie that is, offended by the concept? I'm not sure. Please contribute again. Please help us understand that this is a war. This is a battle. Not to separate women and make them more powerful than men. Not at all. We are collaborators, and it is absolutely necessary for the men to catch on to the magnificent woman, because it is she, typically, and most often, most frequently, it is the women that are raising the children. Single mothers, they're raising the children. The men have lost the vision that allows them to be careful collaborators in this exercise. Not all men, and not completely, and we're doing the best that we can, right? We're choosing more wisely how to participate. But herein lies legacy, the magnificent woman to the next 5,000 years, for she will be participating in conveying this vocabulary, conveying this understanding to the children. In fact, being able to explain, when I went through it, I solved it this way, but you are given the privilege of choosing wisely what's better. Let's keep going. Thank you very much. Until next time. I'm genuinely excited about being able to bring you insights to a new way of looking at the mind and how it works. Emotional anatomy. Heart home wisdom. Gratitude guides your heart home so that you may discover the lens of awe and wonder. These are concepts that I hope will liberate the world into vision, excited, alive, free to choose. Now, the podcasts are free, and if you're enjoying them, that's great. You can support this through patreon.com/emotional anatomy. Donations are very much appreciated, and we'll continue podcasting. Join us. Thank you.